Testing, testing. Okay, I am very sorry for being late. I've had some workers, the installation guys installing an air conditioner in our apartment, so it took longer than anticipated. Pretty much like my streams and my dock build outs. So I cannot really be too angry at them. They started at 11 a.m., so they had to come at 11 a.m. They started, I think at 11:30, and they anticipated it would take them 2 hours, 2.5. Ended up much more, so they just left with all the instruments. I think they're still in the building, walking down the stairs. So yeah, took a bit longer than expected. But okay, this is not a long stream. If you haven't seen the update on the schedule, I have 2 streams planned for today. The income tax tracker, the thing that I'm going to build now, and I think it will not take me much time here because it's like super basic thing. I'm very often I am. Mm, I am criticized for not doing uh, basic things in Coda, only doing some advanced stuff for those who are already pros and could maybe teach me a thing or two. But yeah, so I decided to build this first because I needed this myself. I used an off-the-shelf tool for tracking my incomes. Well, it was not like it was not super automated. I mean, I had to convert the numbers, convert the currency myself, look up the exchange rates for a given date, fill it out, and then and actually the thing with taxes is that I wouldn't trust an automated system to do everything for me. I wouldn't trust this to track. I mean, just take the bank statements, the income bank statements, and automatically convert the currency and automatically send the tax reports. I wouldn't trust an automated system that, because something fails, and we know that anything can fail. It cannot run on time. It may not calculate properly. It may have a rounding error. And the thing with with our revenue services in Ukraine is that they will never tell you that you submitted something wrong. So you can learn that in 2 or 3 years or whenever they decide to do an audit on you, you can learn that 3 years ago you miscalculated your taxes by something like a few cents, or well, a few in our local sense, and I didn't correct that and you didn't correct that for more than 2 tax periods in a row, 2 quarters, and this was the reason enough to take you off the simplified the system and put you on the generic system, and now you owe us like 50% of your income as fines. And you can learn that, or well, if you don't want that to happen, if you want us to uh, not report this, not track this, forget about it, please. Like, the bribes are still running strong in our economy. Just speculation, never gave any bribes to anyone, never participated in any of these things. But yeah, when they're saying there's corruption in Ukraine, they mean it, and it's like on many levels it's happening. So it's better to double check everything manually. That's why I'm not really trusting these automated systems when it comes to revenue reports and all those things. I don't want to run into that situation where everything I earned I owe now to the revenue services. But yeah, what I want to do though, I want some. So there's this thing, the ledger, the income ledger, that you have to, uh, if you're a private entrepreneur, you had to well, get this paper form book and put all your incomes and expenses into this book. And it was in paper form, and you had to certify it in the Internal Revenue Service, in our IRS, and finally they canceled it. This year, finally they canceled this damn thing, and now you can track your expenses, your incomes, and you don't have to track your expenses. For the system that I'm on, you don't have to track your expenses. You're just paying a flat 5% income tax. So that's the simplified system, because we have another system when you pay only on the revenue part. I mean, income minus expenses, you only pay on the part that you've earned, like that's left for you after all expenses. So you have that system. But we also have the simplified system. The tax is really nice on that system. It's just 5%, plus you have to pay. So it's like, yeah, now my European friends who are watching me are probably very jealous, because yeah, I only have to pay 5% on my income. But on all the income, everything that gets into my account as payment for the services, doesn't matter what I pay for, like rent, even if I get the a partner and I decide to take payments just to my account and then send the partner's share to their account, it's gonna be both me and him or her paying 5% each on the income. So that's how it works. So sometimes when you're a big agency and you're like earning 100 grand and then you're paying out 90 grand to your subcontractors, it's suddenly it's better to it makes more sense. It's more viable to get yourself on the generic system, on the general system. But as long as you're a private entrepreneur in Ukraine, you can only pay 5%. You can earn up to, I think, something like $100,000 a year. You can stay on that system as long as you're not doing certain kinds of work. So you have to register yourself for certain kinds of work. But okay, that's all that's all the backstory of it. I was using an off-the-shelf tool for this, and it was fine until I just got tired. They started nagging me about renewing the subscription, and they did it in such an annoying way that I decided that okay, I'm done with them. I don't want to use that tool anymore, and I'm a coder maker, so why am I even bothering? I can build something like this and make some content out of it, right? So that's why I'm gonna do this now. So let's spin up our coda.new, and this is gonna be an example how you can make something really simple out of Coda. And to prove the point, this is gonna be a part of a bigger doc. I want to rebuild a consulting services tracker for myself. I am still using the one I built when I only started consulting on Coda in 2019. So it doesn't serve its purpose that well anymore. It's cumbersome to switch between clients. You cannot really track anything done by your partners, like my partners. It's hard to switch between clients. Yeah, as I said, there is no summary reporting. It doesn't help me do the taxes, doesn't help me do any invoice work, so I have to do this all manually. So time has come to finally make it. And perhaps I'll make it on the streams for all my patrons, for more advanced users. And this tax tracker is just gonna be a very super basic thing, super basic for all the beginners in Coda. And it's gonna be even so basic that I'm actually going to build this all in a single page. So then I can take it as a template or just copy paste everything and insert it into my big client tracker doc. So right now you cannot really easily take multiple pages of your doc and bring them into another doc, but if you have everything on a single page, you can do that. And that's why I'm going to build this without so normally I'm making some structure for the doc, I'm making the database, I'm making the UI section. Right here, right now, there's no need for that. we're doing super basic things. So that's how our consulting tracker started. And regarding the Pomodoros, I think I have an hour and a half to build the whole thing. So maybe somewhere in like 40 minutes, I'll make a short break for 5 minutes or something, and then we'll just continue. And I hope that this is actually very simple. So let's make it an income tracker. So first, to-dos. We need to be able to insert or add records. And right now it's just gonna be income, and we can also track clients or something. So add records to the, so create basically an incomes table and add records to it in USD. We need to, because reporting is done in our local currency, which is Ukrainian hryvnias for my case. First thing that we need to do is a way to track this in hryvnias. And would be ideal if we had some sort of automatic conversion. So if time permits, use a third-party tool. In our case, I'll be using not Zapier, but Integromat, because Zapier, I think it is pricey for this. You need to pay for it to be able to access custom APIs, and I need a custom API to get historic exchange rates. So I'm gonna use Integromat. Maybe that's gonna be my second half of this tutorial. To get historic exchange rates and link incomes to clients. Now there's another thing, exploration. Let's do the exploration of this idea. If it's gonna be a part of my consulting services tracker, that's pretty much where I'm tracking time spent on a client. So I could sort of make some automation to automatically calculate. I know what's the rate I'm charging this or that client. I know how many hours we need to track on. I need to bill them for. But historically, I see that there's a few things that can affect that resulting number. It's not as easy as just taking the number of hours, multiplying it by the rate, and getting the number that gets into my account. Sometimes I'm charging as wire transfer, and sometimes the fee for the transfer, usually clients pay for it, the commission for the transfer. Sometimes it's me who's paying it. According to the invoice, I'm writing that it's on my it's my expense, the $40 transfer fee. I'm only doing wire transfers on payments like over $2,000, so that it's more viable to do it that way. But yeah, I have to subtract that. Or sometimes I don't, and that's the variability of these things. So it's not as easy as multiplying. Another thing is sometimes I charge through Payoneer. And by the way, all the Patreon payments also go through Payoneer. And Payoneer takes their own cut for withdrawals of the funds that I have in my Payoneer wallet. So what I only have to tax what I end up getting in my bank account. So I need to subtract that and yeah, I have other sources of funding. I have Patreon, which will come as another lump sum, or payouts from Payoneer. They all come as a lump sum. So it's not that easy. I tax everything in bulk, but yeah, I cannot really attribute or I cannot really take and just multiply by hours. So, but we can have something later when we connect this to the bigger tracker. We can think of how to get that number. But for now, the number should be manually entered, so that we can tweak it and manually enter it. So for now, no automation around that part. Then, what happens with our tax returns in Ukraine is that you are submitting a tax, you're submitting an income report every quarter. So but the way you're submitting it is you have multiple numbers to fill out. So first, if you're submitting in quarter, you're submitting in a cumulative fashion starting from the start of the year. So for quarter one, you submit what you've earned in quarter one. In quarter two, you submit the total sum of quarter one and quarter two, right? But you then have to calculate yourself what is it's a bit moronic actually, but they have this, so the tool that I was paying for, it was calculating it for me, and the official way to submit tax reports through the IRS online cabinet, the taxpayers cabinet, you have to fill out these numbers yourself. So it would be helpful to have Coda calculate this for me. You have to get the total earnings since the start of the year. Then you calculate the amount of taxes you have to pay starting from the start of the year. Then you subtract the number that you have already paid, and then you get the number that you are due to pay in this quarter. So that's the logic behind it. And yeah, and this in a way is really a very simple task. We need to have an incomes, and then we need to have something like a summaries table, and I'll show why. And so yeah, for that we also need to quarterly summaries table, and numbers to fill out the tax report. Yeah. By the way, I'm often forgetting to do this. So sometimes I'm using like these shortcuts, and I have a tool to show you what hotkeys I'm pressing. Almost every time I forget to turn this on, because what I'm very often doing, when I'm done typing out a big action, I select it, copy it, so that in case Coda hiccups and tells me that there's a problem with my formula, and it restored it back to the empty state or to the state it previously was before the edits, I can just Control V and not retype it from scratch. So that's what I'm accustomed to doing now. So yeah, let's make a table of our incomes. So, and I'm still gonna call it DB incomes, even though I'm making everything in a single page. So this is gonna be our summary column, and I'll keep it for now as a separate column, because what I actually like doing, I like collecting some summary, some data out of these things. So let's say I could make a date a display column. So if you don't know what the display column is, it's the column that's used, its value is used when you are referring to a row. Its value is shown for that row. So if you have like a table of people, you can make their name a display column, and then when you are making a lookup on the people column, or you are trying to reference some column by using the @reference wherever, anywhere in your doc, that's the value that's going to be used as a handle for that row. Or you can have like a separate column for first name, last name, and then you can collect a full name. Because if you're using first name, then you have multiple people with the same first name. You can mix together those rows. You can confuse them and not know which row you are looking at exactly. Is it Paul D, or is it Paul G, or is it some other Paul, if you're just using that? So it's a good idea to have a separate column, or have some, or if you know that all the records, all the values for the column are unique enough for you to tell them apart, you can use that column as a display column. Otherwise, I like making a dedicated display column where I can combine some data. For instance, I can have multiple payments on the same date. So I'll have something like a payment on this date from client A and a payment on this date from client B. So that's how I would do that. Okay, so this is gonna be our date. This is gonna be our, let's actually track the client, because why not? Client. And we need a new table, right? DB clients. I don't know, is everything, can you, I'll probably make it larger because, well, it's not like I'm going to make very wide tables here. So we have DB clients, and let's say this is client A, client B, and we know that from client A on this date, we receive, and we have multiple ways to go about it. So we can have, so we want to track, let's say I want to track incomes in the foreign currency and in our local currency, so that, because right now the currency column only lets me use one currency. I mean, this is purely cosmetical. It doesn't really change anything whether I select, I don't know, euros or dollars or pounds. It's just still a number. So we cannot get rid of the symbols, so we need to either use the dollars. Normally I'm charging in US dollars, so that's what could be used as the default for this. But I also want to be able to track it in our local currency. So, oh, I'm missing a YouTube premiere on the channel I really like watching. So, but okay, this comes first. So another way to go about it is to, well, let's leave it for now like this, and we'll see if we need anything else later down the road. So the amount in USD, and we'll have our amount in Ukrainian hryvnias. So there is one problem, though, with numbers in Coda. The problem is rounding errors, because, and you probably have seen this, so if you take like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and it's like all okay, but you take 0.1, 0.2, and then you want to have a sum of these things, and then sometimes for some reason this is not 0.3, but this becomes 0.3 or so. Yeah, if we take incomes, amount, it's gonna be this number now, the like 0.3, but with some tail in the end. And this is, I think I explained it a bit briefly on some of my previous streams. I'm gonna explain it on the data type stream, what's happening here actually. But, well, we have these problems, these rounding problems with our decimal numbers. So if possible, we're gonna maybe track hundreds of our currencies. So I mean, instead of like 0.10, we're gonna like track cents, right? So 10 cents or 20 cents, then it's gonna be more precise. That's what we can do. But let's forget about it for now. So we add the amounts, and pretty much that's all that we need. So we can also track exchange rates here. On that date, and if time permits, we will even, yeah, automate the population of this thing. So yeah, we have the exchange rate, and we will have our amount. Right. And now we need to, yeah, do the summary. So it's gonna be I really like using the, so you could do something like concatenate date client. It's gonna give you this formatted string where you have a date and a client reference. It takes a bit more space than it should, and if you want to make it like a more compact version of it, you can do the toText, which will remove all the metadata, all the links from the value, and will just give you a plain text value that's also very efficient to store in your table. So in the end, you can do the toText. Sometimes I like, or most of the time, I like using the format function, which will let me first, instead of concatenating a date, then some string, then some other thing, some other value, then some other value, especially if I'm using more than two values. I really like doing it like this. I'm setting up a format string with some placeholders. The placeholders are used like this. So the placeholder 1 dash placeholder 2. You can add some other text to it. So client that, or well, date this, client that, and then after a comma you specify the arguments that you want to insert in place of these placeholders. So the first one's going to be the date and the other is going to be the client. And you basically also get a string. If we remove that, so this is like we separate the logic of combining things together from the actual template that we want to reuse, and then we populate it with data so it looks cleaner. And again, at the end result, you can do the toText on it, and it's pretty much the only one of the few cases where it's valid to use the toText. And it's also not a very good idea to just combine a row reference to anything, because even though toText will take the display columns value and put it here, imagine you're doing something else. Imagine for clients, you also have something like a rate or whatever. You have like 150 to 30. At some point, you make this a display column, and you see this recalculates now, because the value that's displayed in the lookup and the value that gets returned when you reference a row is now taken from this column, because we designated this column as a display value. So I don't really like to have that thing. So I don't like to realize that this may change if you're at some point you decide to change your display column. It will end up recalculating this whole column, and maybe something's then dependent on this column, and it will end up recalculating some other column, and you have this avalanche of changes coming through your doc. So instead of that, I really like just dereferencing the column that you really want to use, like the client's client name. So the reference is a fancy word for take a property from a row, or take a column out of a table, like for the whole table or for a subset or for a reference row. So be specific with which value, which column you actually want to reference from that, whose value you want to take for that column. And now whatever you change here doesn't affect this summary. And this summary will, if you also read something specific from here, this summary will not affect wherever you're reading this thing. Okay, so yeah, we don't need that for now. We have our incomes. So let's say we earned something on March 1st from client B. We earned something on January 7th from client A. And in hryvnias, that would be, so the exchange rate, let's say it was 28, 27, 27, and 5. And the amount here would be, what? We could have it as a formula, even though I would still give myself a way to recalculate this manually, but yeah, we can just take the amount in dollars multiplied by USD exchange rate, and we need to round that up to 2 places. So this is our, yeah, and and 2 decimal places. So if the exchange rate, sometimes they are, what's the today's exchange rate, by the way? So we're taking the national banks. Do we have English? It's Ukrainian and Russian here. Yeah, the exchange rate is this. So they have more decimal points in the exchange rates for the dollar. And when we're converting from USD to our local currency, we need to take the exchange rate on the specific day that we've received the funds on that day. So this is gonna be this, and it gets rounded. If we don't round it, how much is that? Well, that's pretty much the same. Yeah, so this has to be rounded up to 41,965, I guess. Oh, no, not. 99, yeah, so it gets rounded down, even though you can have issues with that as well. So sometimes it makes sense to round up by 1 cent. Still, that I would leave myself some way to just review these things, whether everything is accurate and correct, and check on these things that might trigger the issues. Okay, so we have this amount, and now we need to have our quarterly summaries. How do we do that? We could just make a view of DB incomes, and it's the simplest thing, right? The simplest way to do this. We need we could take this view and we could simply group it, right? So we can make something like summarize this as a sum. So take the sum of these things. We could, well, hide all these things, but we need to summarize by quarter. So we need to figure out which quarter this date belongs to. How do we calculate that? There's multiple ways to do that. So we could take them, and I think the easiest way to do that is to take the month of the date, right? So it's gonna give us the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc. And then we can attribute this month to quarter 1, which is months 1 to 3, quarter 2, which is months 4 to 6 inclusively, right? So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. One way to do that is with an if statement. So if month is like more than 1, less than 3, then it's quarter 1, then it's quarter 2, and so on. Another way to do this is to use some smart formulas. Like you can take the month and divide it by 3, right? So, and then round this up to the nearest integer. And this will give us the quarter. So January will give us quarter 1, February will give us quarter 1. March will give us quarter 3. Then quarter 1 again. Then 4, 5, 6 will give us quarter 2. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, right? So this is one way to apply some math to just divide the month by 3. So 1 to 3 becomes 0.3, 0.6, approximately, and 1. They all round up to 1. Then 1.3, 1.6, and 2, 2.3, 2.6, and 3, and so on. So this is what you can do, how you can make an easier formula than just checking against. Not sure if it's gonna, well, it's just a simpler formula. Maybe it's not, but again, if you're a beginner, it may not be super clear for you. So let's just make it in a different way. People are coming from Excel and they are using this cascade of if. In Coda, you have the switch if formula that lets you make multiple tests, test for multiple conditions, and have different results based on that. So if date month is less or equals than 3, then it's Q1. If date month is less or equals than 6, then it's Q2. And maybe some countries calculate quarters differently, so this could be useful for you as well. Otherwise, it's Q4. So it's Q1, this is Q2, and again, this may look a bit like magic for you. And you may ask, why am I not comparing date, month more and equals than 1 and less? So why I'm not doing it like this? Date, month more and equals than 1 and less than 3, and then more or equals than 3 and less than 6. So equals to 4 and 6, and so on for the rest. And the answer for that is these conditions are tested in order. So the second one is only going to be tested if the first one fails. But if the first one matches, so if month is less than 3, it's going to return you this value, well, this is all, the switch if takes pairs of arguments, right? Condition, value, condition, value, condition, value, and then the value that's returned when no other condition matched. Or if you forget to specify it, then it's just going to return you a blank. Or you could have another condition there and another value. So this is how it works, the switch if formula. So the thing is, it's first gonna check it against whether it's less or equals than 3. Of course, it's more or equals than 1 because there are no negative months, there are no 0 months in Coda. And if it's matching, then it's gonna return like the value of Q1 and not even check for any other values. But if it's not, if it's more than 3, then it's gonna check the next condition. And this thing here is redundant because we already know that it's more or equals than 4, because otherwise this condition would match. So we don't need to type this out. We know that it's already more than or equals than 4 if we've got to this step of the calculation. And so is here. We know that if we got to this step of the calculation, it's already more than 6, because, or more than 6, yeah, because otherwise either of these would work and you would either get Q1 or Q2 already. So that's in case it wasn't completely clear. And the Q4 is without any condition, because we know that if we got here, then the month must be more than 9 already. And we are recalculating the month 3 times, and it's not a big problem because it's an easy calculation to make, but just to showcase you the latest and greatest of Coda, a few months ago they added this with name formula, which allows you to give a name to a part of your calculation and then reuse the part of your and then reuse that calculation, capture, like calculate it once, give it a name, and then reuse that value in multiple places of your formula. So you could type this in a way like this. You take the dates month, you give it a name, let's say a name of month, and then you make and then here you can type in an expression that uses that month variable. We call in programming, we call these things variables. So instead of recalculating date month, you could now replace this with month less than 3, month less than 6, month less than or equals to 9. We have a question in the chat. Why I'm not sharing a doc link as a result? Well, some docs I will share once they are in the state that I'm comfortable with sharing them. I mean, do you have any specific doc that you're wondering about? The doc playground, the Patreon playground, I'll share it as soon as I'm done with it, and I hope this should happen before the end of this month. The what did I do? The GTD doc. I need to polish it a little bit. Maybe today in the evening I'll polish it a little bit. I need to record a video. Yeah, the GTD doc. I want to record a short instructional video on it. No one's gonna watch the 5-hour live stream to figure out what I wanted to do with that doc, right? So I need to like record a 10-minute demo. And yes, the GTD doc, I will, in the state that it's in right now, I'll share it with the whole community, not just the patrons. So yeah, this is going to be a public doc, and maybe I'll ask folks from Coda to put it on the doc gallery. And then I'm going to make a separate version, like an improved version of the GTD doc. For patrons, it's gonna have the SVG calendar, and by the way, that's what motivated me to do my next stream in an hour is gonna be all about SVG. I'm gonna make an SVG playground again on a stream, on a live stream, and yeah, so that's the plan, and that doc will be shared with patrons only, and maybe I'll make some reuse logic for that doc. Coda says I'm offline. I hope I'm not offline for YouTube. Yeah, so hope that answers your question, and I saw your thank you message, so that's okay. Great. Moving on. So this is the idea behind this, and we can now we can add a group, for instance, on this. And of course, we don't just need a quarter here. We also want to concatenate this. Since we are already using the text, we can put a concatenate a space and a or we could do something like this. We could also have a with name quarter and return a format of here's our quarter and here's our year. So this is gonna be the quarter, and the next parameter is gonna be our date dot year to extract the year out of our but again, this is a temporary solution, so we have something like we can group by the quarter and show the amount and hide the add row, and we can also collapse all groups and end up with these thumbs. So if we have another entry on the in this quarter and another entry in this quarter, and it's again client something, and it's $400 and $500, and the exchange rate is again this, and we are running into these rounding problems again, but whatever. yeah, we have our sums here, our sum up to date. But it's not really what we need, because we need to fill out, we need to, yeah, when we're doing our tax reports, indeed, we can, first, we still need to filter by year. So I think we still need to extract the year, because we need to only take the sum of items from this year. So there is this separate as date function in Coda, which I'm not really using. It takes the date and it automatically adds you all the columns. So it extracts the day, the month. For some reason it does this with in all caps. You can then delete what you don't need. So this is like a shortcut to add yourself the missing fields. But not a big deal to just type it yourself. Add a column, type it yourself. For some reason it added it as a text column, not as a number column. So yeah, this is a year, and this is the quarter that we're gonna use for this. And in the simplest form, we know that we will not have future incomes. We can have a quarterly view. And filter it for the year. And you have this simpler, I think you have this simple, do you though? No, you don't. It's only for dates, which says it's just this year. You can have probably you have year to date, you have last year, okay, year to date, yeah. All the days since the start of, oh, here's a hidden formula they're using for the filter. Date start of truncate to a quarter, to a month, to a date, to an hour. Interesting. I'm learning something here. I guess you can do something similar with a date as well. So there is this formula, date time truncate, where you can specify truncate this. Yeah, that's a new one. We used to have date time truncate. So there was this date time truncate to a year will give you the first day of the year. So I guess this is pretty much what was the formula that we were trying to use there. This is perhaps even older. So you say it's a new one, but this perhaps is year to date. This could be actually an older function. Yeah, see the examples, date time truncate. So I guess it was first the date start off, and then they discontinued that and created a date time truncate function and then surfaced that one. So this is pretty much the same. I just didn't remember that you could truncate to a quarter. I thought you could have only the month and a year. But you can truncate to the start of the quarter to have this maybe maybe in a simpler way even. So date time truncate will give you the first day of the quarter, and yeah, interesting. But this is what they have with like duplicate page now. It used to be called duplicate section. Yeah, the start of date, hidden formula. I think it's an older version of the date time truncate formula. It's still there because perhaps some docs are still using it. For some reason, they are still using it in a filter. I think it's just legacy that they never actually fixed. Coda is full of these small surprises. I mean, you have the list formula and then you have an array formula, which is like a developer's name for a list. And it's still used when you're specifying the drop-downs. It still uses the array formula. Okay, you can do it like this, and you can filter out the next quarters and you can filter out previous years, and this is how you get your sum. But it's not super smart doing it like this, because, for instance, let's say we already have 3 quarters that we want to calculate for. So we have quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4, and we need to figure out how much we need to pay, the taxes that we need to pay only in this quarter, or what are the summaries that we want to fill out. Well, actually, to think of it, we can already have this here. So we can have, like, our tax is in hryvnias. It's the amount multiplied by 0.5 and rounded up to 2 decimal places. And in a way, if we sort these quarters properly, so let's say we sort them ascending, and this is actually, we cannot really sort them ascending because it's going to sort them by text. And if we have some value from another year, that's unless we filter that for a year, actually. We're going to have quarters sorted. But we can have a group on year, which will override the sorting of groups and will sort quarters only within each year. So this is, if we do it like this, we can kind of fix that without having to do any tricks or any some fancy sorting things. So we can make a group, an outer group for a year and sort on that, then make an inner group on a quarter, and given then Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 are alphabetically sorted, these are gonna be sorted within each year, so this will give you a proper summary of your things. Of course, you can collapse all groups on this level to just see the sum, because if you have multiple entries for each quarter, you can have the individual entries, but you're basically only interested in the sum. You can unhide the tax column. And right now it's blank because the summarize is not turned on. So again, the sum is here. And basically, if you're not filling out any incomes for the future dates, let's say it's quarter 4 already, what the numbers that you're gonna put, that I'm gonna put on my tax report, the total earnings since the beginning of the year, I filter this by year, so the year is just 2021. The earnings since the beginning of the year is this number. The taxes that we have since the beginning of the year is this number. I need to figure out how many taxes I have already paid without this. So I still have to calculate this manually, right? And for that reason, this table does not give us all the calculations that we need. We have this number that we only need to pay 2,100 in this quarter. That's the remaining amount for us to pay. But we need some way to calculate these 3. And we could go and maybe, we could filter out this, take the sum, then filter this back, and in a way we could have an interactive filter on these things. What would this give us? It gives us the search control. Now let's not do it as search control. Let's have it a multiple select control on quarter select. And the selectable items are gonna be, we could specify them manually, like Q1, Q2, Q3, and then set our filter in some smart way. But we can also just refer to this table, quarterly view, out of the quarterly view of all rows that we have in this view right now. Take the values of the quarter and make these our selectable items. So our selection, what is blank for some reason. And why is that? You know why it's blank for some reason? Perhaps because it's the quarter is dependent. Yeah, now it's reading properly. We had a improperly set up filter, so it couldn't figure out what rows to filter out of this. So we have quarter, and because we have it's a whole ledger, we have we can have duplicate entries, so like 5 entries for the same quarter, and we don't want our list to have these duplicates. I see it already reduced these duplicates. But what I like to do is to explicitly set the unique so that we know that our list is only these values. I can also sort on it so that they show in order. So only the Q1, Q2, and Q3. And the filter, we add a filter on the quarter to use the filter of quarter select. Now we have another problem though. Now it doesn't have anything that's not in this view anymore. So if we deselect everything and there's no quarters to display, we end up with an empty list. So a more proper way to do this is not to take the values from the view, but to take the values from the whole ledger. So from DB incomes, take all the quarter from DB incomes, filter for the year. Year equals today dot year. So the year of today, even though it's not super proper way to go about it, because we are filling out tax reports for 2012 in for 2020 in 2021 in the beginning of 2021. So this is not a correct way to go about it, but perhaps a separate filter for a year. Let's make a separate filter for a year. For some reason it added this, at least 2020 and something. No, let's make it also first a selection, a single select from DB incomes year unique. So 20, and again sort this. Year at least, well, not at least, but year 2020 or 2021. Quarter, we're gonna read all quarters that we have in that year. Year equals, how did we call this control? Year select. So year equals year select. We only get the rows where year is the one that we selected here. Then we take all the values from the quarter column for all the rows that we've just filtered, and we bring them down to unique values and we sort them so that they appear in order. And now we have all quarters from 2021. Unfortunately, we don't have the all thing works like the all thing, so it's gonna calculate, it's gonna filter properly. So quarter start, but the quarter uses interactive filter quarter select. So this thing reset, if it's set to all, this thing resets it correctly. But once you start fiddling with it, so you delete the Q4, this thing unfortunately will not reset the selection. So this is something to remember. Even though the value here affects the list that you have here in the control, if there's an explicit value selected, like explicitly you select 3 out of 4 values, it's not gonna reset it automatically. So this is the problem, sort of. You have to change the year back to, you change the year, then you have to click select all once again. But once it's set to all, it's gonna work like a charm. Yeah. We have this problem in Coda when you have a sequence of filters or sequence of selections. It does not reset the selection in the next filter, in the next select, in the next multi-select if the list of option changes. Doesn't have that, so you need to keep that in mind. Yeah, so in a way, if we want to calculate the end of year numbers and we want to know how many taxes we've already paid, you can just turn off temporarily the last quarter, take the number here, and then turn on the quarter again and have the number, the total number, and see the number that's due to be paid. So this is like the absolutely simplest way to go about your calculation. I'm gonna go on a 5-minute break now, I think, and after that I'll try to recreate this filtered view, this grouped view with actually the second table of summaries, be more smart about it. And I don't know if we will have time after that, if I explain all these things, if we will have time after that to connect the automatic currency exchange rates to this thing. So there's this website, so I'm using the either the Minfin website, or there's some other website where I'm checking on the historical rates. So there's the National Bank of Ukraine website. It has the Ukraine, the English version. So it has maybe it has a better API access, because the Minfin one, I signed up for their API access, and so far it's the most generous in the most generous where is it, the has the most generous quotes for the pricing plans for API access. So 10 monthly requests. I know that I'm not really getting more than like 2-3 income records per month. 4 I think was the maximum number, or 3 was the maximum number, so it's fine. For me, the free version is enough already to look up the historic rates. But gosh, the 10 requests per month, it's not even enough to test the integration. I want to like make the integration and test the integration, and I'm gonna use one of those free requests already each time I'm running an Integromat scenario. So gosh, this is pathetic. What about the National Bank of Ukraine? While we are on this 5-minute break, I'm gonna see if they maybe have some API switch to Ukrainian to read it. Okay. I'm not interested in anything but the official exchange rate. Yeah. Oh, this is nice. We have the code USD, and then the date is like 2021, let's say. What was, well, for this generosity, the grammar error in pricing is unacceptable. If they want this much for, well, it's not that much. They want $10, like $11 a month for 1,000 requests, whatever. Like not that much, but I giggled like a girl at the 10 requests, 10 free requests per month. So what was the date? 2021 0401. 0401, and the JSON and the exchange rate 278226, and this one gives us a different number, so someone is clearly lying. Oh, it's date, no, it's year, month, date. Maybe I changed the date. What was the date originally that I originally set here? Okay, anyway. At least these polls don't have any pricing. They don't have any pricing. They don't have any pricing info, so I guess it's just free. I'm also very curious why they are... Okay, this is not something for the basic stream. This is more for a advanced stream. You never ever return a request in an array form like this. So never ever you have a square brackets, an array of responses in your, because it is susceptible to attacks. If your website, yeah, so this is susceptible to attacks. I know there is an attack on an array. You can override the constructor of an array, set some custom code for it, and then when you receive this, that custom code will be executed. You always want to have an object on your top level response. So that's, if anyone from Ukrainian National Bank is watching me, please fix this. Okay, this is the same response for multiple currencies. And what else do they have? For today, okay. So there's a few ways to query it. I don't know which of them is the one that I should use, honestly. Okay, there's something for me to figure out next. Back to the income tracker. So the quarterly view is nice, but what would be nicer is actually getting these data aggregated into a series of summary summary rows that would give me all the information that we need to fill out the report. Let's make a new table. DB quarterly summaries. Here we will have, yeah, the quarter. Our display column will be year and quarter. So it's like And this is going to be, yeah, our Q1 of 2020, Q2 of 2020, and so on. So we will have a year. We will have a quarter, and the way we will match these things, so there's multiple ways to match these things. So we can calculate Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 here first, then match by Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 here. Or we could match by dates. So we don't need the quarter information here really. We could match by dates. So we could have something like quarter start and quarter end. Or we could have something like a quarter index, and it's also gonna be our 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Year is like 2021, 2021, 2021, 2021. This would be then calculated as the format of Q placeholder and then a placeholder for a year, quarter index, year, and to text. And based on this, we could have something like start date. It's going to be our year is our year, month is our quarter index multiplied by 3, right? No, because it's not just the quarter index multiplied by 3. We need to have first month, second, and third attributed to the first quarter. So if we multiply the first quarter by 3, we already have to get 3, third month. And 2, we get the 6th month. So what can we do here? We can subtract 2 and this way get, well, the beginning of the, and the first day. So this is the first day of that quarter. Again, a bit of magical calculations here. We take the quarter index multiplied by 3, but what we can also do, we can quarter index minus 1 multiplied by 3, which means offset from the start, but this will give us 0, 3, 6, and 9, right? So to make it 1, 4, 7, and 10, we need to then add plus 1 to the result. I hope you understand what I mean here. So we take a quarter, multiply it by 3, divided by 2. Or again, we could just have a switch if or a switch formula. So we have a year, and on quarter index we could write a switch. And the difference between switch and switch if is that in switch if you are typing in conditions here, so compare something to something, and something is more than that, then use the value. Here you are basically, you have the value here, and here what you say is basically take the quarter index and compare it strictly to 1. So if it's 1, then the month is 1. If it's 2, then the month is 4. If it's 3, then the month is 7. Otherwise, the month is 10. And I forgot a comma here, I guess. Yeah, misclick. So this is another way to go about it. So the switch is basically the same as if it was switch if quarter index equals 1, quarter index equals 2, quarter index equals 3. So it's just a shorter way to replace these switch if with equals with this scenario. So we can keep it like this, leave it like this. Switch. Yeah. And end date of the quarter is, we can take the start date. There is a function to end of month and the month offset, how many months to add, and take the end of the month of that month to add. So we add 3 months to that, no, 2 months to that, 1 month to that, 0 months to that. So yeah, 0 means add no months, 1 means add 1 month, 2 means add 2 months. So the end of the month 2 months from now is the 31st of March, then the 30th of June, and so on. So this is that single formula that no one really remembers that it exists, but this is how you can figure out what's the last day, because previously I myself was doing this. There is a date, there is a relative date function that adds like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months to it, and then I would go and subtract 1 day from it to get the end of the quarter. But there is a simpler formula for that, end of month 2. But you could do it either way, whichever you remember. You don't have to memorize all the formulas. You have just to remember that, okay, there is a capability to do that. You can get to the answer this way or another. So this is our end date. And we don't really need it here anymore. But we can, because this data doesn't really belong on the incomes. Doesn't really belong on the incomes table, but it's more of a summaries table. We keep it clean, and even though I know that earlier I said that, okay, don't be afraid to make wide tables, add more information to it. Right now I'm more of a fan, make smaller tables, make more tables if you need to, because the mental capacity to work with like a really wide table, you get really overwhelmed by a big table, by a wide table. So it's better to keep it clean, to keep it to a minimum. If you can avoid using many columns for like if you don't need many columns for UI, for things to display on the UI, like maybe you need some buttons here, or you need some formatted stuff, like something combined together, then go for it. But if half of your table is just for display purposes, you're just gonna confuse columns together a lot. It could be a good solution to make a separate table, set up a way for it to mirror the rows in your database. I'm gonna perhaps make a separate stream next month. I'll have a talk about this, the front-end and back-end tables, the front-end back-end table approach in Coda. And the more I work with clients' data, with big tables, the more I grow fond of it. But it's gonna be like more advanced topic for advanced users. So yeah, we now have our start and end date for each summary. We can set up a lookup to all the incomes and set up a formula to automatically filter for each quarter, filter all the income rows that belong to that specific quarter. So, and this is what sets Coda apart from Notion, apart from Airtable, because here you can set up a live formula to go into to take the DB incomes table and filter it and take only those rows in it where the date is more or less than this row start date, and date is less or equal than this row end date. And this will give us all the income rows for each of the quarter. And don't forget to set your lookup to allow multiple selections. It doesn't matter really, because the value in the cell is the one that the formula returns. It does not depend on what you set up here. This is purely for cosmetics, but it's better to keep it for the integrity of your schema. So you know that this is a multi-value. Each cell here can have multiple values, so it's better to set this checkbox on. This will, in cases like this, like adding the columns with easy UI, you can have things like tax and collect the sum of all of those taxes. This is how you can add a column without writing a single line of formula code. Yeah, so we have income rows. And while we could also have a column, so we can have on something like earnings in this income rows, we have the amount. Earnings in quarter. Okay, we don't need to calculate taxes on individual incomes now. Oops, something broke. And why did it break? Don't know. Happens sometimes. Not a big problem. If it's not reoccurring, then you are pretty much safe. It's not the formula that you've written that breaks your doc. It's just some hiccup with how edits got saved or didn't get saved. So it's okay. Yeah, you have earnings in quarter, and now you can calculate the tax here because you're only interested in the amount of tax per quarter and not per, so, and not for each transaction. So earnings in quarter multiplied by 0.5 and round up that to 2 places, or just round to 2 places. I don't remember if I'm actually rounding up or I'm rounding down. Yeah, so this is how you have it by quarter, but we are also interested in the sum of earnings to date and the tax that we've already paid to date, and the tax that's, well, we have here the number that we are due to pay in this quarter, but we also need to have this summary to date. And what we can do now, there's 2 ways to approach that. First, we could have a column, like let's duplicate the column, and instead of having this date more than start date and date that less than the end date, what we could have is date more, like not the date, but year, not date, year equals this row's year, and date is less than end date, and this way we query all the rows that have this year but that are before the end date for this quarter. So in a way we are requerying everything, but we don't have the lower bound set at the start date of the quarter, but we have it set on the lower. So yeah, we requery everything. We again calculate the sum of everything here. We calculate the tax of everything here. But we could do it the different way. And the different way is to query the previous summaries from this year. And it's a more logical one. So we want to look at all the summaries or the quarterly summaries that we have already reported. We can have a lookup of the same table, the DB quarterly summaries. So previous quarters for this year. And we can make a lookup on DB quarterly summaries, filter where year equals this row year, so where year is the same, and quarter index is less than this row's quarter index. So for each row, if you remember my and again, this is a multi-select because it returns you cumulatively. So there's no previous for the first quarter. The quarter one is previous for this quarter. the Q1 and Q2 is previous for the third one, and all three others are previous for the fourth one. And if you remember what I was talking about in my fundamentals video or wherever I was explaining this, that this row, so this formula gets recalculated for each row. So if you set a formula for a column, it gets recalculated for each row. And the way to know which row we are calculating this for right now, this is stored into this row reference. So this means that when we are calculating for this cell, we are taking from this, so this, well, just the year is equivalent to current year dot year. Current value dot year, it's absolutely the same. It automatically assumes its current value quarter index. So if we type it like this, the answer is so this is the same, absolutely. You just have to be careful because sometimes it will incorrectly assume not the current value but this row, and you will end up with something like this row year equals this row year, and this will give you the true for all rows, and all rows will pass through the filter. So, or some rows that shouldn't pass through the filter will pass through the filter. So if something's not working with your filter, the first way to look into, the first place to look into, the first culprit that may happen is click on your bubbles and see whether it says current value dot year or this row dot year, whether it says what you need it to say, and not something else assumed here. It's a very common issue I see in the forums. So yeah, this means for each of the rows, like for row number 1, filter from the table where year equals to the year specifically in this row. And index is, well, and the index is less than the index in specifically this row. So current value is a way to, just like this row is a way to specify which cell it's calculating for, current value is a way to specify which row we are currently testing in the filter, because filter goes through all the rows and tests them against this condition. And to know which row is getting tested at each moment, that row is inserted into current value. So we take the year of the first row, the year of the second row, the year of the third row, the year of the fourth row, right? And it gets tested against this row that we're calculating this for, this row that we're calculating this for. So in a way, we have 4 rows. This means there's 16 comparisons in total here. So here, this formula is calculated like 16 times with all the combinations of current value in this row. This row, four times it's calculated for the first row, current value, then second row, current value, then this row is this, current value, and this row is this. Yeah, current value, I mean current value is the row. So this is the difference between this row and current value. And I think I talked a lot about this already, tried to explain. It's something that people who are new to Coda are not, it's hard for them to grasp this concept. But these are basically just the names for values that change as the formula is recalculated in different contexts. In context of we are calculating for this cell, we are calculating for this cell, for this cell, and for this cell. That's why we have, with a single formula, we have different results in different cells. That's what allows us to have different results. Because the values of this row and current value are, well, the values of this row are different for each of these rows. Yeah, so we got our previous quarters, and now we can, from our previous quarters, we can have the sum of earnings, and actually we can have earnings, like cumulative earnings to date. It's gonna be the sum of previous quarters earnings plus this row's earnings. So this gives us the number that we have to report, the sum of the numbers from previous plus the number in this quarter specifically. So this is the number that we have to report. In the same fashion, we can have from previous quarters, we can have the sum of all taxes previously paid tax and tax to pay in this quarter. So we have paid 0 because there's no previous quarters in this year. We have to pay 2098.25. Then we know that we've already reported this, so we need to only pay this much. We know that to date we've already reported this much. This was the paid tax to date. This is what needs to be paid in this quarter. We could actually, again, cumulative. I think we need to report the cumulative tax as well. Tax to pay. So this plus tax to pay in this quarter. Actually, no, the previously paid tax, we have that. And also don't make it don't be afraid to name your quarters in your columns in a very verbose way, because what I often see as well, lots of columns with cryptic names like tax or tax and then some other word like quarter tax or whatever, and try to figure out what that column means, especially if you're a consultant coming to support to do something on a doc that's given for you. So make yourself a service and don't be afraid to name your columns in a verbose way, to then be able to figure out very quickly what each column does without looking into their also cryptic formulas. Because if they're cryptic names, the formulas are even more cryptic because you don't know what exactly it tries to calculate. So this is going to be previously paid tax plus tax to pay in this quarter. So we have, yeah, the cumulative tax, and we have the tax to pay in this quarter. And yeah, and this is how, when you're finalizing the summary, you can have these, you can now make a view of DB quarterly summaries. Hide everything that you don't need for your tax report. So you need this number, you need cumulative tax to pay to report, then previously paid tax, and then finally this number. And you can set up a filter to only show you the latest quarter. You can again make yourself an interactive filter for this, a select one or whatever, or some smart filter, or you can also add something like a due date for reporting. It's gonna be okay. This is interesting because you have to report. We have 5 minutes left, so before I start another stream. So the interesting piece here is we have to file the tax report 20 days in the 20 days period, I think, after the end date of after the last day of the quarter. It's either 20 days or it's 40 days. I don't remember, honestly. I think it's 20 days. But if it falls on a weekend, it should be the next Monday after that, or the next work day after that if it falls on a holiday. So one way to do that is we can have the end date plus days, 20 days, right? So we have the date when we need to file that report. Let's see what weekday it is. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Okay, it's not good for not that good for I wish I could show you. Okay, let's assume it's 10 days. Yeah, it's Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. But then what you can do, there is a formula, workday. that lets you add the number of working days to a given date. And if that number is 0, it adds nothing, right? If that number is 1, what did I just do? Okay, for Saturday and Sunday, it moved it to the next, next Monday. But for Monday, it moved it to the next Tuesday. So it's interesting. It's fast. It's interesting. Not as easy as I thought. Mm, not as easy as I imagined it would be. But well, you can always add one work day and then do something like name it as day after, and if day after minus days, and if day after weekday is Monday, and I think Monday is what? Monday is 2, then minus 1, then minus 0 days, otherwise minus 1 day. So we added 1 day, it added 1 day to a, okay, but if workday is Friday, then, okay, we can go, you can figure it out yourself, right? I don't have to, yeah, do this now, especially since there's 3 minutes left before the next stream, and I need to have a restroom break before I start the new one, and I need to shut down the air conditioner because I already feel it, the winter is coming. I left it turned on to test whether everything is working fine. So yeah, I think I'll stop it here now, and I will probably get it in a better shape to share with the public, even though there's really nothing here to share. It bears more of a homework. So I think it's better to leave this to yourself, to recreate this doc. I don't know what you find so amusing. Pushu, yeah, Pushu, am I saying it right? Like Mushu, but yeah, with P. Speaking of P, I need to, yeah, shut down the stream really and start a new one in 2 minutes. So sorry for that. I hope, I don't know how much value it is in here to share it with the community really, because this is, for me, it seems like it's absolutely basics, but maybe someone finds this enlightening in some ways as a basic stream. And if you have any ideas for a better one or something to build for our Coda beginners, for the absolute beginners at Coda, please, you have the Patreon roadmap where you can suggest topics for my videos. And yeah, you can also ping me through any channel, literally YouTube, Slack, the Coda community, the private messages, the whatever, the email, whatever. All right, I'll be back on another link. So there is another link for the SVG playground. Please join me in like 2 minutes. Cheers.